Hello, I'm Rob Brock and I work for KDAP. I'd like to tell you about a free and open source, high quality educational software suite for children aged between 2 and 10 years old that's built with Qt. GCompris is used as a teaching aid worldwide. It is available in more than 50 languages and has global users estimated to be in the millions. These days, GCompris is a project under the umbrella of KDE. GCompris was originally written in C and Python using the GTK+ widget toolkit, but a rewrite in C++ and QML using the Qt widget toolkit was initiated by its founder, Bruno Coudoin, in 2014. I asked Bruno what inspired him to get started on GCompris and what he hoped to achieve.
I started this project in 2000, so it's quite a long time. And at that time, I had small children, and I was already a Linux user. So I was really a fan of open source and of using Linux on my regular PC, and I wanted to provide them some educational activities, but there was almost nothing existing or really few applications at that time, and so I decided to start one, originally in GTK, and then I've been hooked to do this for many years, because when you start a project like this, it's infinite. There is no end, and things are changing all the time, and you have to adapt, you have to improve. That's how it started.
From the outset, you wanted to do it as an open source project?
Yes, I really enjoy the community. I'm used to work in software. I'm a software engineer, so I'm working in companies at that time where community development, software development was more like a proprietary small group doing things really on specific goals for customers and so on. So doing something where you have all the freedom to develop the feature you want when you want it, and with exploring new technologies, you can explore new tools the way you want it without having necessarily a business interest to do so. It's also very inspiring for a software developer, because you can approach technology before the bleeding edge technology. You can test it on your pet project, and sometime later it appears on your business project because it becomes mature. But you are also pushing to introduce it in business project because you know them and you know the value, you know what it brings. So you become some kind of also a leader in bringing new technology in your day job.
So you did all of this in your spare time?
Yes, I had all the time. I had a day activity, and I did a lot of work weekends and in the evening, working on GCompris. It took really me a lot of time to do this.
Your wife teaches English. Was that helpful to you? Did she give you feedback?
Yes, a little bit, but English and teaching foreign languages was really a small part of GCompris. But for some activities, yes, we did work together on this. But I also work a lot with my children to test the software with my children, so they spent also a lot of time to play with it. And sometimes I also developed software in GCompris. We call it activities. It's quite a framework for developing educational activities. There is more than 100 activities in GCompris. And sometimes, instead of trying to explain something to my children, I wrote the software to explain the concept. For example, we made a trip with my children with a bicycle. In Toulouse, there is a lot of canal locks. And we wanted to explain the canal lock to my children, but you're not sure they understand. It's quite complex. So I wanted to let them play with a canal lock. And you cannot do that in reality. And so I made some canal lock simulator so they could play and move about from one side to the other and opening the different valves so the boat will move and so on. So it was fun to develop. Yeah. One contribution, what was fun also is that in the software it did attract a lot of contribution, external contribution. And one time there was a contribution, a submarine simulator. It's quite simplistic, but it's a simulator. You have the basic concept of a submarine. And this person he didn't put the jauge into the tank, and it was hard to play. But he did put a lot of noise signals to have the bubbles and things like this. And I told him, but why isn't there a level into the jauge? And he said, but I'm a submariner. I did this, and you don't use the jauge. You hear. Just by hearing it enough, you know what happens in your submarine.
So did you add a gauge for the children?
I did add the jauge into it. It was my contribution because it gives you a better feedback. And sometimes in school there is no sound or you have many sounds. So it was not practical to do it the way he thought it. Anyway, it was a good contribution and I could build on it.
Mm-hmm. Were there any particular challenges along the way? Things that became more difficult than you expected?
At some point, yes, the big challenge I had is that when I started the project, I selected GTK. There was two choices at that time already existing. You had GTK and Qt, and you have to pick one or the other. So I selected GTK. Technically, really fast, or 2 or 3 years after, somebody added a contribution to be able to develop activities in Python. It was a good addition because the logic and the code to develop an activity is not that complex, and it was a good fit for a scripting language to do this. And we also wanted to attract new contributors, and especially students coming from Google Summer of Code or from other student projects. And it was good to have a simple language to start with. But then, with this technology stack, when the mobile world came in with smartphones and tablets, we were kind of stuck because this technology was not appropriate and ready for being ported on mobile device, on Android, on iOS, on other platform. So it becomes a difficult choice to say, okay, what do we do? Do we stick to only PC, or we change technology and we take another approach where we can open the software and bring the software to more users, because users will use tablets, and we have to provide them something that is still open source. One of the big feature of GCompris is that we stick to the open source philosophy, where there is no advertisement, and we see for children, I believe that it's good to stay to keep the software out without advertisement and tricks that the children clicks on pop-ups that will bring to commercial things and so on. We really do not want to do that. And on mobile, there is a lot of application for children, but usually they are financed by advertisement, which is bad. So we thought that it would be nice to have GCompris on this platform, but our choice was to say, okay, we have to pick another technology stack. And after, I think it was in 2015 or something. And so 15 years of development of a software, and you have to do something different. At that time, took the crazy decision I made an evaluation of two technology. One, to use HTML5, so to say I'm full web and I'm doing just using the HTML world, that you can make application on mobile, and it's a valid path. You could do it. Or to use, we evaluated use Qt with QML, and then I selected Qt and QML. And doing so, as the project was community-based around GTK, so it was integrated into the GNOME community. But at the same time, I made the move to switch to the KDE community, because I wanted also around the project to be part of a software community and not to be alone. So I went through the process to go through the incubator of KDE. And when the project has been mature enough, we have been integrated in the KDE software set.
Ooh, that's a fascinating story. So, how can a new contributor get started?
We have a wiki with a developer page into the section, a developer section that explains how to start with the project. And we are also documenting how to start, how to build a project on your PC. What do you need? And so you can be really fully independent. You have everything. You have the software on your PC. You can start to make change and to see what happens. So it's very good for starting development, because it's quite. We are using some easy concept and working on not a nuclear station that you have behind, so you are not afraid to break something. So this is one part, the development part, and we have also a set of ideas of what we would like to see into the project, so that if somebody wants to contribute, we have some list of open subjects, so somebody can pick a subject and feel interested in it and bring a contribution. And it's also used for student project. So student projects, sometimes they are they don't know the product enough, or they don't know what to do. They want to contribute, but they like to get guided through an idea. So they can pick an idea, start on the idea, and then discuss with the developer and say, okay, I want to do this, and then we can make a little bit more design of the contribution. help them and guide them through the contribution.
At some point, you had enough and handed the project into the care of others. Is that correct?
What happened is that in 2016, I changed my day job, and during this change, I also wanted to free my mind of this activity and do something else of my free time. And so I decided to give the project to new development community that was already there. In fact, that was already contributing to the project. But I did a step out in some way and gave over all the keys of the project, everything to Timothée and Johnny, who is main also technical developer of the project. Timothée is more a graphic artist and the community manager, I would say, of the project.
We're hoping to talk to them later about how it's all going now. But before we let you go, when you started off some 20 years ago, you can't have imagined how it would end up. How does it feel now to see full country governments making GCompris part of their school curriculum?
Really fast, I got some positive feedback from users, and I've been sometimes really astonished to see what people were doing with GCompris. Just sometimes I was going, I don't do it regularly. I didn't do it for a while, but just going on YouTube and looking at GCompris, and you have teachers there that are presenting how to use GCompris in a school, or a group of teachers training themselves on GCompris to use it in school. And the one that was the most really impressive for me, that makes me cry literally, is that I did an activity to learn the Braille system for blind people, with the spot, and it was kind of crazy idea. I'm not blind. I don't have any blind relatives, but I thought it was a good link between also Braille is also like a binary code, like an encoding of characters, and it's also close to software to some point. And so I had decided to make activities to teach the Braille system. And we had a Summer of Code student working on it. There are several activities like things about the Braille, the history of the man who invented the Braille system. And one time on YouTube, I saw in Mexico, I don't know if it was Mexico, but in Mexico, an interview. It was a TV interview of a Braille school, a blind school, not a Braille school, but a school for blind children. And there was someone introducing what activities are you doing, and at some point he presented GCompris on how to learn Braille for non-blind children. Of course, I didn't have a keyboard for blind, but it's good for people who have a really bad sight and they may become blind. They can use the software to learn, to teach, and to practice. And so I was kind of surprised to say, okay, I just invented this, and I say it may be useful for somebody. And in Mexico, there are blind teachers that are using this to learn really to people who need it. And for me, that was really astonished. I don't know what the word to use, but big surprise, yes.
Great story. It's fantastic. Thank you so much, Bruno, for creating this software and sharing so much of your story with us.
Thank you, you're welcome.
In our next video, we'll talk to some of the people who are working on GCompris today. Our viewers might also like to know that they can support GCompris financially via Patreon. Just see the link below the video. As usual, thank you for watching, stay safe, and feel free to share any feedback or questions below the video. Bye-bye.